Alright, so now let's talk about the tween animation. So when I talk about tween animation, I'm actually having multiple sort of tween animations. Alright, so let's take a look at all of them one by one. So the tween animation is simple transformation. Transformation in terms of position, size, rotation, etc. to the content of a view. So if I'm having some sort of animation that I want to apply to a view, right? So that is actually done with the help of tween animation. So the animations can be defined in the XML that perform transitions such as rotating, fading, moving, and stretching. Let me tell you, all these kind of animations are acceptable only on a graphic object, which is an example could be an image view. Right? So these are the various animations that are available to me with the help of tween animation, which is rotating, fading, moving, and stretching. Right? So if you want to perform more than one animation, you can define your own. You can customize your animation and define it in your own set class. So these are the following animations that we have. One is the alpha, the scaling, the translation, and the rotation. So we'll talk about all of these one by one. So if I talk about this particular one, so here what I have is I have an activity main. Under that I have an image view. Alright, I have this image view under the activity main, and then we have 5 buttons. One is alpha, scale, translate, rotate, and custom. And what I have also done is, if you all people can see, I have also defined the on-click listeners to these buttons in the XML itself. Alright, have defined it here and declared it in my activity. Can you all see that? So that is another way how you can use the on-click listeners from the XML itself. If I go on to the main activity, first let's talk about the alpha animation. So on the click of the alpha button, what I'm doing is I'm creating an animation object and I'm loading a kind of animation. Alright, which is r.anim.alpha. If you see here, I have a folder layout. Alright, I have a folder anim which says for animation purpose. Alright, so just remember that this name has to be anim. Alright, then we have alpha.xml. Let's see what this file contains. So here I have the alpha animation for this file, and you can see that the duration of the animation to take place, the from alpha and the to alpha. So whenever I talk about from alpha 0.0, that means it is completely faded out and it will come into picture completely when my to alpha is 1, and the duration that I'm specifying is a second. Let me just run this up. That's correct, Niladri. It's like transparent. 0 is transparent. Let this open up the simulator and then just run it up. Alright, so let this run up onto the emulator, and then I can show you exactly how the tween animation works. Alright, so here if I just run this up, so if I click on alpha, what will happen is it will go from the fade out to fade in. All right, it fades out and fades in 1 microsecond. If I just increase the duration here, call it 5, do a run as, this will be increasing the duration. So if I click on alpha, you can see that. Alright, so that is how the alpha animation works. Now let me tell you about the scale animation. So the scaling animation, how the way it works is, if I go on to scale.xml, you can see that the duration that I want to specify, the from X scale and from Y scale, that is from which position you want it to scale down. Alright, the pivot X and the pivot Y, that is the center focal point of the image that you wanted to scale up. Alright, and 2 means which position you want to scale it to. That is, I'm actually scaling it up to original position. If I go on scale, you can see that since there is no focal point, right, if I go on and pivot it at 50, so it will start up from this 50% of the screen space. Let this run up. Alright, so if I do a scale here, so you can see now the scaling effect comes from the focal point, that is 50% of the screen. If you want to see it again, now you can see that. Okay, now this happens. So this is how the scaling works. Alright, so here in the scaling, what I'm doing is on the scale animation, you can see I'm loading the scale animation and just setting this animation with the start animation method with the help of the animation. Alright, now let's talk about how we'll be talking about. Let me just run this up again. So we have talked about alpha animation and we have talked about the scale animation. Any person having any doubts in these two kind of animation, you can just respond back onto the chat window. This is the alpha animation, fade in, fade out, and this is the scale animation, which will be scaling the picture from some place to some other place. I'll wait for everybody. That's correct, half width and half height, pivot can be set to that. But the reason why it is not coming up from half the scale is, you can see from scale is 0.0. So if I say 0.5, now it will come up from the 0.5. That's correct. We can always take the values from this user. If I do a scale layer, you can see that. Yes, Niladri, it's half of this. Are you talking about the pivot values? Are you talking about the start and X and start Y values, Niladri? The pivot values are at present it's 50-50. So it's like the center of the image, half of the width and half of the height of the image. So here it is. The actual pivot point of the application of the particular image view is 50% of the width and 50% of the height of the image view. That is what the pivot point does. So I just change it back to the normal values. I hope this is clear to you, Niladri. Any doubts that you have here? Then I think the half pixel, maybe the width equal to 100. That's correct. That is correct. that is what I'm trying to say here. Because actually when I talk about say in terms of image view, I do not play with pixels. I would rather play with the width and the height attribute, not the pixels, Niladri. Alright, so let's take another look at the third one, which is the translate. So if I click on translate, this is how the animation, what I have defined till now. Now let's take a look at the translate animation here. So you can see the duration. First element is the duration. Then fill before and fill enabled equal to true. That means that I do want to fill this image up with the contents of the image or not during the translation. Can you see that? This image is getting filled up during the translation. Suppose we create an application, and if the device is touch screen, then the user can interact by touching it or need to do something else. No, Asif, it's like the one emulator that I'm working on is a touch screen emulator. So what exactly do you want to work with the help of the touch screen apart from clicking on the buttons? Just tell me that so that we can have clarity onto it. And here you can see another attribute which is from X delta. And you can see I have specified as minus 100%. Can anybody tell me what this means here? Anybody can think about it? What is this minus 100% specifying here? That's correct. That's correct. Niladri, that's correct. That's correct, Asif. That is what I'm doing here. What I'm saying to it is, it has to be translated from X delta, which is minus 100%. So the image will be placed somewhere around at this point, at this place. Can you see my cursor here? Can you all just see my cursor? Alright, so the image is placed at this position, and it has to be moved from this position to this position. So this is how the translate image works. Now let's talk about other animations, which is the rotate animation. So if I talk about the rotate animation, a rotate animation can be like clockwise, counterclockwise, depending upon the angles that you are giving. So if I say duration 4 seconds, from degrees 720, so it's like the number of rotations that I want to. One complete cycle equals to how many degrees? One complete cycle of rotation. That's correct. 360. So what I'm doing is I'm rotating it twice. Can you all see that? And that too counterclockwise. Alright. So here I have rotated it pivot 50-50, that is center focal points, from degrees 720 to degrees 0. So that is why it is rotating in the counterclockwise direction. If I give it the opposite, it will rotate into the clockwise direction. Let this run up. The new code changes. All right. So you want me to make changes onto this rotate one? Niladri, do you want me to make changes onto the rotate one? Alright, you want me to place values 0.5 here. Pivot X 0.5, 0.5. You want me to change the values in scale. Alright, I'll do that. After this, I'll do that. If I click on rotate, this is how the rotation works. Now what you want me to do is, instead of having the 0.5 values, you want me to place 50%. Is that correct? Here I place 50%, and similarly here I place 50%, which is 50% of the screen width. Now it will be pivoting with the help of the 50-50%. Alright, so this is how the center focal point is the pivot point. I understand, Niladri, I just got your point. It was just that I was thinking about it as 0.5 and it was a percentage basis. That's correct. Okay, so any problems in the rotate animation? Anybody? This is the rotate animation here. Okay, now let's create our own animation. So here I have created my own animation in custom animation. So whenever I'll be creating some animation all by myself, just make sure that you use the only predefined animations. You cannot use any other animation. So here what I'm doing is I'm customizing a scale and a rotate animation. So I just show you what exactly is the customization here. You can see the scaling done and then the rotation. Alright, so here I say if I do the opposite of it, I just remove this, place the rotation first and then the scaling up. So it will be the other way around. If I do a rotate, this is the rotation. Now if I do a custom, it will first rotate and then scale down. Alright, so that is how you can mix and match multiple animations in your applications and create your own animation effects. I hope this is clear to everyone, all the animations that have been covered till now. Any person having any doubts, you can respond back onto the chat window. Alright, so let's close this up. Yes, Vinay, can you just tell me what exactly is the animation that is not clear to you? I have just opened them all so that we can talk about it. I'll let you respond back onto the chat window. Installable APK for installation. How to export installable APK for installation on device. So if I talk about the APK here, if you go on to the navigator view, here is the APK for the Tween animation. Here is the APK, Asif. Here is how you can find the APK. Go on to show view window, show view, open up the navigator view. Now if I bring the file, you can copy this file from here. That's correct. You can copy this up into the pen drive and share it with your friends. Yes, and install. Just make sure that you have the USB, you have the non-market installation on the respective device that you are installing it on. Can we mix alpha, rotate, scale for a result at the same time, not one after the other? No, Niladri, it's like merging up of all the animation effects. Has to be, it's like you cannot, since you, if I talk about alpha, alright, you will not be having the kind of properties that are required in the rotate in the alpha object. Alright, so the mix and match has to be in terms of one after the other, not the composite elements, Niladri. Here you have Asif, just to tell you about that, you have to have checked the unknown sources, which allows the installation of non-market applications onto the device. Alright, so that is how you can just share your APKs across.